Hello friends, in this lecture we're going to implement the scoring system and the scoring user interface. So first of all, let me just explain how this is going to work. We're going to have a score integer in the enemy spawner and we're going to increase the score every second by 1. So the score in this game is going to be like how much you survive or how long you survive. That's going to be our score. In order to do this, we're of course going to keep track of the score using that integer, score integer in the enemy spawner, but we're also going to create a user widget and a widget blueprint so that we can display this score on the screen for the player to be able to see. Okay, let's get started. First of all, we're going to create a new C++ class and the type is going to be a user widget. We're going to use this class to create a widget blueprint and the name is going to be my HUD for heads up display. I created this already, so let's go ahead and switch over to Visual Studio and start working on this. Inside of this class, we're not going to have a lot. We're simply going to have a text block, which is a user interface element, and then we're going to have a function called setScore that's going to change the text of this text component. First of all, we have to include the correct header for this, which is going to be components text block.h. And then we're going to create the variable for this, which is going to be a u property edit anywhere. And this has to be a meta bind widget because this C++ variable is going to be connected to a text block that we're going to create in the widget blueprint. And in order to create that connection, we have to use this meta tag here. And we also have to use the same name both in C++ for the variable and also the text block in the widget blueprint. This is going to be a type of uText block pointer, and we're just going to call this score text. And then we're also going to create the function called setScore, which is going to take in an integer called the new score. And this is going to use that integer to set the score text to its new value. Okay, let's go ahead and create this function. First of all, we need to create the string from this integer, and the string has to look like this: score, colon, and then whatever the new score is, let's say 99. Just like that. In order to create this, we're going to use a printf call from the fstring class. This is going to be score colon and then a %d to place an integer in there, and the integer is going to be new score, of course. And then we're going to store this in a variable called string. And the next step is going to be setting the text of the score text block component. And that is going to be a call to score text set text. And this is going to take in an f text. So what we have here is an f string, and we need to turn that into an f text. We can do that by calling f text colon from string. And we're going to pass an str to this. And that is going to create an f text class from the string that we provided. And this is all we need in here. Simply a function that's going to set the text of the score text using the new score integer that we provide. And we're going to make a call to this from the enemy spawner, and that is going to be the place we keep track of the score. Okay, so let's go into the enemy spawner and start to implement the rest of the stuff. First of all, we're going to include the my HUD header here, because it is going to be here that we actually create the widget, because that's also something we need to do. We need to create it. And in order to create it, we're going to have to create a bunch of variables. The first one is going to be very similar to the enemy actor to spawn here, because we need to know the class of the widget we want to create, and that is going to be a my HUD, and we're going to call this the HUD class, and we can leave it as edit defaults only. And we're also going to create a variable to store the pointer to the widget we create. And that is going to be, let's see, a visible anywhere UMyHUD pointer, and we can just call this HUD widget. Okay, those are the things we need to create the HUD. Now we're going to create the variables we need to keep track of the score. First of all, score is going to be an integer. We'll set it to be 0 by default. And we're also going to make this visible anywhere. We need to create a timer so that we can increase the score every second. That's going to be the score timer. This score timer is going to call a function, of course, so let's create that as well. And finally, we're also going to create a setScore function here. Let me just create that here. setScore. This will take in the new score, just like the one we created in the HUD. But this time, this one is going to update the score integer, and it's also going to update the HUD, so it's going to make a call to setScore from the HUD as well. Okay. We can go ahead and create these functions at the bottom here. Let's paste in the class name as well. And I guess we can start by implementing the setScore, which should be very easy. We're simply going to set the score equal to the new score, and then we're going to make a call to HUD widget, setScore with the score. Just like that. Very simple, like I said. And next up, let's do the timers function. So the timer is going to time out every second, and every second we're going to increase the score by 1. So here we simply need to call setScore and say score plus 1. And that's going to do exactly what I just said. Okay, so now that these two are done, we can go into begin play and actually create the HUD widget at the start of the game. So we're going to do that down here. And first I'm going to check if the HUD class is valid. And if that's the case, we can make a call to create widget, which is going to take in the class name. And that is UMyHUD. And then it's going to take in the player controller, which we can get from uGameplay statics get player controller. This is going to take in the world and then the index of the player, which is going to be the first one, and that is 0. And we also need to provide the static class, which is going to be UMyHUD static class, just like that. Actually, that is not true. I think we're going to simply provide the HUD class here. And maybe both ways work, but this is why we have the HUD class. So let's just do it this way. And this is going to create the widget and return it. And we're going to, of course, save it in the variable we created for this purpose. And if this is successful, we can check for that and then make a call to setScore, or we can just call setScore to 0. And we also need to add this to the viewport so that we can actually see it in the game. Just like that. Awesome. So now this bit of code should create the HUD at the start of the game and add it to the viewport. And after that, we're going to set the score to 0 so that we update the HUD and also the score variable. The score variable should be 0 at the start, but like I said, just to update the HUD, we can do it this way. Now all we have to do is to set the score timer in start new game. So first we're going to say set score to 0, because at the start of a new game, we should set the score to be 0. And then we're going to set the timer. That's going to be the score timer. On score timer timeout, that's the function we need to call. And this is going to loop. And this is going to be a single second. I'm not going to create a variable for this, but if you want to, you can also change how often you increase the score. Okay, that should start the score timer at the start of the game, and we're also going to stop the score timer when the player loses. So here we're going to say get world timer manager dot clear timer score timer, and that's going to stop the score when the player loses, which only makes sense. Okay, so this should be everything we need to do. Let's do a quick recap here. So at the start of the game, we're going to create the HUD widget using the HUD class, and then we're going to store it in the variable. After that, we're going to add it to the viewport so that we actually see it in the game. Very important. And then we're going to make a call to set score with 0. And set score is going to set the score variable that we have here. And it's also going to make a call to the HUD widget's set score, which is going to set the text for the text component. That's all good. Then we're going to make a call to start new game. And in start new game, we're going to set the score to be 0 again. This is going to be kind of useless the first time, but the second and third and fourth time we play, this is going to be important. And after that, we're going to set the score timer to go and loop each second. And in the timeout function, we're going to increase the score by 1. So that's going to create the score mechanic in the game. And finally, when the player loses, we're going to stop it. So that's going to be the entire, lifetime of the score system. And of course, when we restart the game, when we call start new game again, we're going to reset the score and then start counting again. Okay, so that should be all, and that should be good to go. Now let's go ahead and exit out of Unreal, rebuild the game. And of course, we're going to create the widget blueprint, and then we're going to test this. Okay, let's go ahead and create the widget blueprint. We're going to go into the blueprints folder, right click, go down, scroll down, go into user interface, and at the bottom, there's the widget blueprint option. For the class, of course, we're going to pick my HUD right here. And I'm going to call this widget blueprint my HUD. Let's open it up. Now we're going to have to do some UI design, but we only have a single text component, so it's not going to take a lot of time. As you can see, this does not compile at the moment because the score text doesn't exist. And this has to exist because we made it, that meta bind widget thing. So now it wants us to create a score text here. First, we're going to put a canvas in here. So let's just drag that into the hierarchy, and then we're going to look for the text component and drag one of that into the hierarchy, and we're going to name this the score text, exactly the same name as that variable, very important. Enter, and now you will see that it's going to compile. Great, so I'm going to anchor this to the center top. I'm going to, let's see, reset the position. Let's change the text to be score : 9999. And then we're going to increase the size. So let's go into the font, increase the size to be something like 110. Just like that. I'm going to make the alignment in the center. And then I'm going to put the alignment here to be 0.5 so that it is centered like that. And then I'm going to drag it down just a little bit. So maybe like 10. Okay, so that should be good to go. If you want to, you can spend more time here. And of course, later down the line, you can have more stuff in the HUD. But for now, we're simply going to have the HUD. Let's compile this. Now we have to go into the enemy spawner because we have to set that HUD class variable to this widget blueprint. Okay, let's save, compile, play the game. And as you can see, now we have a score HUD in the game that's counting up, and if I lose, it's going to stop, as you can see. And when the game restarts, it's going to back to 0, and then it's going to start counting again. And now we can actually measure how successful we are in the game. Great. So that's going to be all for this lecture. Now we have a scoring system, and of course it's not perfect, but you can take this and you can improve upon it and implement your own ideas to make a more unique system that is unique to you, I guess. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.